And welcome back, guys, to another episode of Katawa Shoujo. In the last part, we finished off our tea party, got the approval of Akira, and now we are visiting the nurse's office, which almost feels like a decade since we've actually goddamn talked to this guy. I think we're gonna have to own up to a little bit of our friskiness, if you know what I mean. But let us get started. Remembering that the bell to signal the end of lunch break will sound soon, I give a sigh and open the door. The burden will stay with me just a little while longer. Well now, if it isn't Nakai, good to see you. Or bad, I guess, considering that I am a nurse. He gives a small laugh, amused at his little joke. Find his humor lacking and somewhat off, but the fact that he can make light of such a situation is perhaps comforting. Or at least distracting. His brief episode of entertainment over, he claps his hands together and gets down to business. I take a seat as he gestures for me to do so. I wish the classrooms had seats this comfortable. I can feel my mind wandering as my eyes quickly scan the room, distracted by all the small changes since I last came. Alright, so what brings you here today? What brings you here? I haven't seen you often, so I assume your health's been good so far. Well, mostly. I see. His smile drops as I trail off. I feel slightly guilty about it. It's these moments where I can't rationally call myself normal, and that makes me so reluctant to see the nurse. There's an admission that I am different from everyone else. While I was on a trip during the long weekend, I had a few problems with my heart. He hums very seriously and nods as he does so, urging me to go on. I think it was as I was walking a fairly long distance. I think the right term for it is a heart flutter. I suddenly went weak at the knees and felt almost like I was having a small heart attack, but it passed in about half a minute. Even afterward, though, I felt pretty fatigued and nauseous. Not good. Not good at all. That was how many days ago, exactly? Did you do anything unusual, aside from exerting yourself before the episode? Or are you taking your medications properly? The nurse switches from awkward jokester to serious health professional mode, rattling off questions, making notes, and calling up stuff on his computer. I tell him about my forgetting to take my pills that morning, and the preceding evening. It was a stupid thing to do, but I can't change anything about it now, except answer honestly and bite the bullet. His seriousness evolves into a frown, and the talk evolves into an instant checkup. I finish buttoning up my shirt again, getting motion to take a seat in front of the nurse. Is this the first heart problem you've had since coming to Yamaku? I've had short pains in my chest before, just a couple of times, but they were more discomfort than anything like this. He leans back into his chair, briefly resembling a white-coated Poirot? Oh god, what? A white-coated Poirot? Is that a fucking bird? I'm gonna have to look that up. I'll put it on screen. We'll figure this out together. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong too. As he mulls over the mysterious case of the heart flutter. Moving his lips from side to side to show he's thinking, his non-existent mustache wiggling, he eventually comes to a conclusion. Well, you survived it. That's always on the plus side. I blink at this one, then notice the nurse is wearing his got you face. It's actually somewhat reassuring. I don't think he would crack jokes if things were really serious, so I keep silent and take my lumps. I'll have a talk with your doctor, but right now I suspect it's simply due to physical exertion. Have you been keeping up with regular light exercise like I directed you to? I make sure to walk a reasonable amount every day. It's usually enough to work up a bit of a sweat, but then again, I'm not really as fit as I used to be. That should be enough then. The main thing to keep in mind is to do regular low-stress exercise. Not short bursts of sprinting and such. I understand. Since leaving the hospital, I've been a lot more focused on my studies, partly to take my mind off not being able to do more physical things. It's good to hear that you're coping well. Sudden lifestyle changes can be hard at the best of times, so I'm pleased to hear that you sound like you have everything in order. Almost everything, that is. Nevertheless, I want to keep a close eye on you for a while, just for observation's sake, just to make sure things aren't going downhill. You understand? That's something I really didn't want to hear. Since coming to Yamaku, all I've wanted to do is live a normal life as possible. Observation was one of the words I came to hate most during my hospital stay. For so long, I felt as if I could have just walked straight out of the hospital doors, if not for that observation the doctors wanted so dearly. Sure, should I come in more often? He checks the calendar next to his computer, which seems to inflict on him a nasty case of furrowing brow. He spins back towards me after that. The summer holidays are a bit of a pain, considering the timing. I'll check with your doctor to try and get a better handle on the situation and see how he wants to proceed, but I think you should just take things slowly and carefully for now. What you're describing doesn't immediately sound like a reoccurring event, but it won't hurt to slow down a bit for a while, just to make sure. What should I do for today? He looks over my shoulder at a clock hanging over the door. I'd never have noticed it if I hadn't followed his gaze. It's nearly time for school to be over, so you may as well just leave early. He gives me a sly wink, making sure that I understand he's doing me a favor. Well, there's his orders. Thanks. That's what I'm here for, after all. I know you might not want to hear this, but you can't ignore your condition. Don't hesitate to see me if you have any further problems, or if you just have anything you want to ask. Bye. He spins around and gets back to typing on the computer in front of him. I suppose I'll just read before waiting for Lily by the gate, considering I don't have much else to do. Even as I leave, his words echo in my mind. My condition isn't something as limiting as many of the others here in Yamaku, and I don't want to burden Lily with thinking about it. If I just live life normally and avoid any sort of short, sharp shocks, I should be okay. I won't let my condition rule me. I'm glad that his attitude hasn't really changed from that. Like, yeah, he's sort of talked back and forth about it, where he's just like, my life it's never going to be the same, it's always going to change, but now he's very cemented in the, I'm not going to let it rule me, I'm just going to roll with it as much as possible. Lily comes into view soon after the bells heralding the end of school day rings out. She says farewell to a number of her classmates, headed in the other direction, before beginning her weekly trip to the convenience store. Afternoon, Lily. The immediate warm smile and relaxed demeanor she assumes upon noticing my presence are unexpectedly welcome. Hello, Hisao. Good afternoon to you, too. She hesitates for a second, but eventually deigns to tilt her face towards and close her eyes. My lips meet hers as we measure, with a measure of slight trepidation before we move off, hand in hand. The fact that we are so close in height is somewhat useful at times, there being no need for either of us to turn our heads upwards nor downwards in order to meet the others. It doesn't take much time to leave the noise of the other students far behind us, the tapping of Lily's cane in her free hands the only sound to be heard. Silence, blissful silence, is all that greets us while we slowly walk in the setting sun's light. I think I've come to really like this town. The huge, green, hilly expanse, the trees everywhere, the somewhat rustic little buildings. So you've come to appreciate the tranquility of it as well? I think so. I came from a metropolitan city near Tokyo, so the quiet of this town really alienated me when I first arrived. After a while, it became really nice, though. I think I prefer it to the rustle and bustle of my home city now. While I prefer the quiet of such a rural town, even when I first arrived, I suppose I had the advantage of growing up in a quiet area before I came here. Hanako said the surroundings are very pretty, too. Lily may say such a thing quite easily, but each time she mentions how others describe sights around her as beautiful or pretty, I feel a little put off. I notice her expression becomes one of anticipation for some question or another. She always has a good sense for when somebody's not saying something that's on their mind, so I may as well speak up. I was kind of wondering, how to put this. Do you ever regret that you can't see what things look like for yourself? It's just something I've been thinking about. She thinks carefully for a time. Do you ever regret that you can't hear people whispering on the other side of the room? I can only speak for myself, but the fact that I can't see is the only way I've experienced life. Just as I cannot do something you can't do something that I am capable of. The fact that the world is made for those who are sighted can be a pain sometimes, but there are many, many people who suffer much more than I because of the way the world is. That does make sense, but still, it just feels kind of bad to describe something that you can't experience to you. She tilts her head quizzically, as if I just said something that makes very little sense at all. But I can experience it. You just said yourself that you like this area because of the way the surroundings are. I like this area for the very same reason. Thanks to the fact that this is a small rustic town surrounded by trees, it gives some peace and quiet away from the din at school and the bustle, not to mention the smells of the city. I suppose it would also be much like the home she shared with Akira as well. Her outlook on it seems pretty sensible. I'm not surprised that she's got a much better handle on her particular condition than I do my own. It's one of those things where it's just sort of like we whenever we look at like a scenery or a painting, right? Like these things are made for our eyes. The sense that you use the most is your sight. You will always use your sight the most. Out of all the things on your body, that's what you use the most. You know, and it being gone, you realize on how many things that you can't do, but then it opens your horizons to how many more things that your body you take for granted too, right? Like you take for granted your sight, but if you close your eyes and then listen to if you're looking at a forest, for example, right? You can look at the forest, you can see the trees, you may see squirrels and everything like that, you know, running around in the trees. Close your eyes and you listen to the forest. You can still hear the leaves. You can still hear the squirrels running around. You may not be able to see them, but you're able to picture them. And it's only one small facet versus so much more that is actually being shown in one or two times, you know, like, or not shown, I guess I'm using sight words to describe it, but you know what I mean. There is so much to our world that doesn't revolve around sight, you know, like I don't have to look at the cat to pet it, right? It makes it easier for me to pet it, but I can still pet it. I can still touch my cat, you know, I can still feel her fur, and you know, like, I can feel the coarse parts and the rough parts and the fluffy parts and all those things. So I know what these words mean and feel like. You know, so that's just a little, I guess, some CJ wisdom, I guess. And it just sort of brings it up. And I think that's what Katawa Shoujo has been doing very, very well so far is, yes, these girls have disabilities, but you know, I mean, obviously it may depend upon the person, you know, like someone like Hanako, for example, her disability is, probably has a lot more weight to it than just, you know, losing a sense like Shizune or obviously Lily here. You know, it's the same where it's even different for someone like Emi and Rin, who they've lost a body part. They've lost a part of them. You know, it's not just a sense. You know, Lily can still do almost everything. Just anything that, you know, doesn't require sight. Anyway, I went off on a tangent here. I apologize. I don't know if you guys like my tangents. I should probably stick to the story more often. But regardless. Her outlook on it seems pretty sensible, and I'm not surprised that she's got a much better handle on her particular condition than I do on mine. Just like how her coming from a location somewhat similar to Yamaku's surroundings let her become more acclimatized in a shorter time. Being born blind affected her stance, by her own admission. I should stop being so annoyed with myself over it, but I can't shake the feeling that I've depended on Lily far too much, given the circumstances most have had to deal with in Yamaku. That makes a lot of sense. You're pretty good at explaining, as always. Come to think of it, where is Hanako anyway? She was with us for lunch. It seems she's busy studying. The exams are far from over, and she said she wants to do better this year than the last. While I admire her work ethic, she's really been trying to give us a lot of room alone recently. She's that type of person, I think. The kind that puts others' needs above her own at every chance. She's a sweet girl, even though so much has hurt her in the past. I don't know. It feels like it's only now, when she's less close to me than ever, that she truly is finding herself. It was thanks to you that she began to become more confident, after all, not me. Interesting. Now this leads more into the idea that she actually may have had feelings for us, in a sense, because we sort of pushed her, in a sense. I take my hands from hers and gently place it on her head. The important thing is that you were there for her. I can't even imagine what she'd be like without having found someone like you. That much became obvious while you were in Scotland. We're all still friends, so we've just got to have faith in her. I think she'll become a good person, and that much is thanks to you being there for her when she most needed it, just as you were there for me. It makes me feel a bit childish when you sound so wise. Well, I try. Aren't you doing anything on the weekend, by any chance? Nothing that comes to mind. Why? Then how about a date on Sunday? It'd be something to do besides exam preparation. Countering my rapid beating heart, she simply smiles and nods. That would be lovely. Where would you like to go? Her face suddenly changes to one of disapproval. You can't do that, Hasao. That's cheating. Do what? A gentleman should never ask a lady to have a date. Ah. Oh. Her smile quickly comes back, assuring me that she is far from serious. Don't worry about it. I'll think about where we could go. I'll leave it to you then. I promise to decide on the next date, though. It's just sort of like, you want to go out on Sunday? Cool. Tell me where we'll go, and then we'll go. If you don't want to go, we'll just not. You know, like, oh man. If you got that plan, you plan far ahead, man. But at the same time, you know, like, I've had dates where it's just sort of like, you gotta do everything, and it's not, as much as I always say, be a gentleman, it is very, it's ingrained in me. Sometimes I just want someone else to take the reins and just go with it, in a sense, right? Why do I have to be the de facto decider all the time? But, you know, it's good that she's jostling him a little bit. With our plans for the weekends made, the rest of the walk down the hill continues in silence. The prospect of that lasting for a length of time, however, is shattered as I catch sight of a familiar figure waiting for us, her hand held high. Oh, Kira. Yo! Thank you, please come again! The change in temperature, as I step outside from the convenience store, sends a chill up my spine. It feels like summer is starting to wind down. Looking to my side, the same feeling seems to affect Lily as well, though unlike me, she doesn't manage to hide the fact. Something I didn't realize at first was how physically delicate she is, even compared to the likes of Hanako. If I had to describe her, I'd have to say that she reminds me of a China doll. Akira walks up behind her and gives a couple of hard pats on her shoulder, much to Lily's consternation. For a moment, she looks as envious of my status as an only child as I am of their close relationship. They talk between themselves for a few moments as I sort out my bags. Their voices too low for me to catch, but eventually they break off and we begin to walk back to school.
Ah, it feels good to be out of that damn office. You kids don't know how good you have it here.
Kids?
Tisk, you too then. Kids grow up so fast nowadays.
You're not old enough to say that.
I don't know. Being around Hideaki makes me feel damn old. He's so precocious, he reminds me of you when you were younger.
He's a nice boy. It would be a shame if Shizune comes to have too much of an influence on him. Akira gives an amused snort as her sister antipathy. She really doesn't seem to regard it as anything to make a serious fuss about, treating it more like a childhood spat. She looks over to me, apparently only just remembering that I'm here, and gives a small grin as she reaches towards her back pocket. What is it?
Just a sec. Let me dig it out.
After quite some difficulty, she manages to retrieve her black leather wallet from her back pocket, quickly fishing out what looks to be a folded square of paper. With Lily all but unaware of what's happening, Akira unfolds the scrap and hands it to me. An old photo of what looks like a younger Lily and Shizune operating a noodle stall, with some other girl in the background. She looks vaguely familiar, but I can't quite pinpoint why.
I know who it is.
It's Misha, isn't it? It's totally Misha. She didn't always have pink hair. Oh man, I'm gonna leave it on that shot. I bet you that's Misha. I guess we'll find out in the next part. So take care, guys, and stay frosty.